Okay, so sometimes the most important part of the service is after the service. So we want to make sure we don't go on too long today because we do have our Thanksgiving potluck, which is why we're gathered here today. What's that? And choir practice for those that are going to be staying. And a Jaguars game for me. So we have a lot of stuff going on. Okay, so you're walking out of the grocery store and someone approaches you and asks you for money. What is your response? Okay. Immediately say yes, show of hands. Immediately say no, show of hands. Everybody's not going to say, okay. Does who the person is make a difference? For example, if they're a woman, a veteran, someone with a child, older person, young adult, someone with obvious mental health issues, are you actually being charitable or enabling? Are you helping them, or are you helping them avoid the help they might really need? Well, I myself, I'm pretty agnostic to the person begging. I know that, like most of us know, maybe giving money is kind of just putting a Band-Aid on something. The person, whether it's addiction or mental health, they might be precluded from getting the help they need. Of course, anybody that's been on State Street going to 95, the guy that just reaches up with the sign and says, "I just want a beer." So, there's a little bit of professional begging that can be pretty good income. So while I normally don't personally give money, if there's a veteran, I do kind of engage the veteran and talk about my dad's service in World War II. And my dad had PTSD, but wasn't called that back then. And so, we might chat about that. But I was at the Harveys downtown not too long ago, and a woman with severe mental health issues was begging and had been rebuffed by a couple people before me. And, walking down, I knew I was kind of the next target. And what struck me was, in a very brief, lucid moment, she said, "I'm hungry." And that, to me, in that lucid moment, it even still kind of brings me to tears. But I knew that she was hungry. And, whether it was a God moment or a universe moment, I felt at that moment that it was a direct moment to me, to action, to charitable action. And it was so pure in that moment that it was easy for me to do. And, I don't necessarily, we're a generous congregation here. So it's not about generosity. But I think it's a moment where sometimes we forget when those generosity moments are important. We overlook them. Life gets busy. And I think what happened to me was she made a moment for me to give to her. And I would say that when you look at that from a rational point of view, you would say sometimes giving money only helps the person to continue with the issues they have, particularly alcohol addiction or not getting treatment or drug addiction. But I've thought about that in generosity, and I also realize that no matter what, they're still hungry, right? And so we have a choice, not out of guilt, not out of a sense that we have to do something, but out of a sense of maybe listening, that maybe tomorrow they might get the help they need. We can't predict that. We've all been in situations where we needed the help and maybe went another day before we got it. And so in the meantime, that moment of generosity may be exactly what they need. We're going to have a couple people talk today, but before that, I want to talk about generosity, not for others. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a couple weeks, But I want to talk about generosity for ourselves. And that's also something that we don't always think about as Unitarian Universalists. We're very good at giving to others, thinking about others. Justice for others is important. But if we don't take care of ourselves, we literally cannot take care of others. And to me, that is truth. When I mentor young people after they get their first job, I counsel them to pay themselves first. Now, some of us are familiar with the, kind of the scriptural thing. A lot of congregations, 10%, to the church. And I can tell you, God does not need 10% of your money. However, the church does need money. But the idea is setting a standard. And honestly, if we don't set a standard, when we want to give to others, if we put giving as the last part of our budget, by the time we get to the end of the month, there will be nothing left. So you want to put it in the first part of your budget. This is important to you. And so obviously the congregation here is important. Social justice is important. Other things that we have in the community, large, for Kelly and I, is important. So we make sure that we include that in our giving budget. But when I mentor people that are have their first job, the first thing I tell them is, I want you to pay yourselves. I want you to pay yourself. And I don't want you to pay your present self. I want you to pay your future self. Because one young man was telling me about his family members were always asking him for money. And I just said, do you think that will change? He said, I don't think it's going to change. And so, and knowing the family was pretty good family in chaos, so I said, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to change. However, I said, but if you asked one of your family members for money, what would they say? And they would say, I don't have anything, right? So I said, precisely. If you're going to change your future, you have to start being generous with yourself today. I said, but when you set up your account, your future account, it's not your money. It's your future's money. And so you can honestly say to a family member, if they ask you for money, I'm sorry, I don't have it, because that's your future's money. And I think it's an effective way to think about this young man now bought his car, has a little boat that he uses for fishing, saving up for marriage. So now he's used his future money for himself. What I think is, whether you're young or retired, if you're generous to yourself before you're generous to others, you will be more generous to others because you will know that you have it for others. There are people that we know that are generous out of money that they don't have for others. And that can be a gift, but not always. Remember the book, The Giving Tree, right? And in the last page of The Giving Tree, what's left? The stump. Now, the child sitting on the stump, I'm not sure the child gets the moral of the story. And honestly, I'm not sure if many of our children or grandchildren understand the moral of the story. And sometimes we don't even understand it. But the moral of the story is we can give out. And that could be a gift, but it's also something that I don't believe is generosity. And so I look at manipulation, exploitation, why people guilt, why we give, and there's motivations, and I look at, we need to give, one, out of a sense of joy, and we need to give, two, out of our sense of our values, because there's a lot of things and events and people that ask us to be generous. And if we stay disciplined to what's important to us, knowing that there's one-offs, obviously one-offs. I recently had two friends that were interested, very concerned about what's going on in Gaza and Israel, and one wanted to give. And, we talked about it, and one is giving to the Israel Red Cross. And I thought that was, very important. It's a gift they can do. And the other decided to give to the International Red Cross because they want to make sure the International is working with both the Palestinians and the Israelis, and they wanted to make sure that they were giving in a way that aligned with their values. And so I really felt like that is a thoughtful gift and aligned with the values of the people I was talking with. When we see a tragedy like that, we ask, can we make a difference? you know, it's interesting. Does your $10 make a difference? You know, if everybody said that, there wouldn't be any $10, right? So I looked at that and I said, you know what? Sometimes it makes a difference to us because we feel like we did something. Because honestly, are we going to solve Ukraine? Are we going to solve Gaza and Palestine and Israel? No. But what are our values? What do we bring to the table that makes us feel like we are part of a solution as best as we can be? For the most part, what I look at in this season of generosity is stay the course. We have Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, lots of opportunities. Every envelope in your mailbox is going to be from somebody saying, oh, it's Giving Tuesday or this or the other thing. All good, but not the reason to give. The reason to give is because it aligns with your values and it aligns with what you're able to do in your budget. And that's very important because at the end of the year, you don't want to get to the point where, oh my God, what did I just do? And that's even, again, for kids and grandkids. I wanted to invite a couple of people to speak on their sense of giving before we conclude. As a Unitarian Universalist church, we are generous with the three things that we talk about: time, treasure, and talent. And what I wanted to share with the readings, and again, the readings could have been the sermon, but what I wanted to share with the readings is that attention to somebody is sometimes much more valuable than a monetary donation or something like that. And I look at in large. Large obviously needs monetary donation. But when you look at the gift that the assistants have with the core members and the attention they provide and the gift that the core members give back to us, that to me is generosity in its highest form. And so I wanted to invite first Isa to speak and Meg to speak a little bit on their ideas of generosity. Isa?
Hello, everyone. How you doing today? Good morning. Oh, hold on. Everybody hear me well? All right, outstanding. Great. How you doing? My name is Isa Stevens. I'm a U.S. soldier in the United States Army. I've been serving for 8 years after duty. I want to give a slight story of what I've been through when it comes to generosity. Also, thank you for being here, Peter. Thank you for bringing me out here. So in the Army, we have these things called badges, where only a select few people can earn them. Only the top 2% of soldiers can earn these badges. I am a badge holder. Everybody hear me okay? All right, there we go. My apologies. Okay. All right. Is this better? The people in the back can hear me? Outstanding. Okay. So in the Army, we have this thing called badges, where you take 500 soldiers and put them through pretty gruesome conditions to be the top 2% of a badge holder. I am a badge holder. This is not the bragging rights. I'm just letting you know I have achieved it. During one of the competitions, this is an individual task, so you can't help your fellow soldiers. You're by yourself, right? There was one particular situation where you get thrown in the middle of the woods with a map, a compass, and a flashlight. You must find where you are, find 4 extra points, and find your way back in the middle of the dark. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. You're sleep deprived, you're hungry, you just want to go home. During one of these competitions, I realized that there's a large swamp to the far east of us, right? And I see a soldier about to fall into the swamp. I can't talk to him. We're not allowed to talk. I can't help him. He's by himself. But I see that he's trying to find a point that's like 3 clicks to the right where he needs to go. But if he does not go to the left, he's going to fall in that swamp, right? And unfortunately, I can't help him. So like, I need to find a way to let him know, hey, you're going to fall. So I realized, oh, great, it's dark by a flashlight. I grabbed my flashlight and I reflected off the sign that he's trying to find, hoping it'll grab his attention. And it worked. The flashlight hit the sign and hit his face. Let him know, hey, there's the point I need to go to. But luckily, he didn't fall to the swamp, which is great. However, he did not make it to the competition, unfortunately. 3 years later, I am now an instructor for the course. I'm not teaching these soldiers how to do the course, how to provide through it. He's back at the course and he finds me. He's like, hey, I know what you did. Because he came back like, I know if I wouldn't have went left, I would have fell in that swamp, probably stuck in there. So I want to thank you for showing me the way. I'm like, no problem. I just didn't want to get hurt. He's like, that was the best generosity I could get to by this time. He is now one of the badge holders as well. So my generosity was knowing that, yes, it is an individual task, but I still need to get my help when I can. So that's my story. I'm very thankful you guys allowed me to be here to tell my story.
Generosity is a spiritual practice. I bet you heard that line before. As a worship associate, I have said that line a dozen times. When Peter asked me to give a few thoughts, my thoughts on generosity, that line immediately popped into my head. Spiritual practice and action, doing something. Gratitude is a reflective process. Gratitude allows me to accept that even in difficult times, I am so fortunate to have so very much. The late author Wallace Stegner, reflecting on his life, wrote, I am terribly glad to be alive, terribly proud to be in America, with all the rights and privileges that those words bring, and most of all, I am humble before the responsibilities that are also mine. For no right comes without responsibility, and being born luckier than most of the world's millions, I am born more obligated. Any one of us sitting in this sanctuary today, no matter our circumstances, know we are luckier than the millions of the world, and that we and I am filled with gratitude. But what about that obligation? It is the actions we take to fulfill our obligation for all that we have, those actions of generosity, that is a spiritual practice. Growing up Catholic, those actions of generosity were often underscored with the promise of a heavenly reward or the fear of the lack of that reward. When you don't have the fear of eternal hell or the reward of everlasting life in heaven, why act? Why be generous with your resources, your time, or your talent? The spiritual practice, the action of giving generously, is its own reward. If service is our prayer, that prayer is offered as a practice of generosity. When I reflect on generosity, you are my heroes. The people of UUCJ, as Peter said, are generous people. We act. We show generosity in countless ways. I have been the chair of the Special Collections Committee for many years, and as the Special Collection organizer, I call on the nonprofits to arrange the collection for the offertory. Two things almost always happen. One, no one has ever turned me down. And two, they ask, you mean your congregation is giving us the offertory collection? Don't you need the money? Well, yeah, of course we need the money. But generosity is our spiritual practice. Generosity around here is not just giving the resources or money, which we are always grateful for. Yet the spiritual practice of generosity is much more evident in the time and talent that is offered by every member of this congregation. From the musicians who support every service to the simple action of giving a hug or sending a card to someone who is ill or grieving, bringing a dish to a potluck, all are actions of generosity. The novelist Isabel Allende wrote, give, give, give. What is the point of having experience, knowledge, talent, or resources if you don't give it away? It is in the giving that we connect to one another, to the world, and to the divine. No matter your beliefs in an afterlife, or God, or divinity, it is in the giving that we are all blessed. I have been blessed to be part of this community that has taught me how to live generously.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Meg and Isa. When we think about giving, the beautiful words that we just heard just show us the example of what generosity means for us. Now I want to after I told you to take care of yourself, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the opposite side of the paradox, right? What do we do in terms of this gift? Take your core values, and I want you to be intentional to see how you can express your generosity deeper and perhaps more wider in terms of what you're looking at. There are going to be some unexpected needs or opportunities. Make sure you put a cushion in your budget to say, yeah, I could help out with this. We have different budgets in this room. It's not just money. It is time. It's treasure. It's talent. We're getting ready to renovate our whole downstairs, right? There's a few of us that could do that, but most of us couldn't, right? That's a talent that we're hiring people to be able to do and helping them with their livelihood. When we look at the, by the way, did everybody see the gratitude tree? You probably didn't know what it was going to look like, right? It's in the back, right? I actually bought that tree from a school supply store, right? Yeah, online. I said, I know I can find one somewhere. But we kept that up. We'll keep it up through Thanksgiving. But gratitude and generosity are two sides of the same gift. We have gratitude that we can be generous. We also have gratitude that we can receive generosity. Now, generous people often say that they get as much out of giving, if not more, than the recipient. But both are uplifted through generosity. Many of us have tapes in our life of both people who were generous and people who were not. Okay? We understand that. Some of our parents had to raise a bunch of kids, right? And generosity was not, they didn't have a lot of money for extra stuff. We learn from the past, but I want us as a congregation to develop our sense of generosity as our community, our charism, individually and collectively. This year, I really feel like through the capital campaign that we did, we had generosity, and our campus is going to be taken care of. We're going to have a beautiful new social hall elevator for our accessibility. This is important because in order for us to give to others in the community, we have to be able to be given to of what we need. And then we'll be able to have so much more out in the community. So we're giving to ourselves. And you will see this later, but our finance committee put in contingencies because something always was forgotten. Oh, we need to do this, or this came up, And so, but we put that in the budget so that if it does come up, we can make sure we continue to be generous to what we need. And I think in this next year, we're going to be able to open ourselves to be more generous to the community. And that's exciting. Under Nicole and the board, our outreach, I think, will grow. And once our campus is ready, we'll be able to host other groups. So to me, I really see a linear progression of our church in our generosity to ourselves and in our generosity outward to the community. And I'm excited about that. So we're going to talk more about the holiday season in a couple weeks, but I want to wish each of you the spirit of generosity and gratitude in your Thanksgiving. Thank you.